when is somebody going to knock on my door and say, how did you land in the corner office?
Hello, and welcome back to You Need a Counselor podcast. My name is Dr. Julie Johnson. I'm the president and founder here at Heart and Solutions. We are still offering our in-office mental health therapy in any of our 6 office locations, or if you are anywhere in the state of Iowa, we are still offering telehealth for that outpatient mental health therapy for anybody ages 4 to 104.
And I'm Chrissa Hunt. I am the Vice President at Heart and Solutions in charge of our BHIS department. So BHIS stands for Behavioral Health Intervention Services, and that is our program where we go in home and work with children ages 4 through 18 on different behavioral skills. And we can also see them in school, in our office, or telehealth right now as well. And this is our podcast, You Need a Counselor. So we are designed for people curious about counseling, but have barriers keeping them from experiencing the benefits of counseling. Our mission is to share stories about counseling, good, bad, and indifferent, and spread the message that everyone can benefit from mental health and behavioral health counseling services.
All right. We post on Sunday nights at 5 p.m. Central. So we encourage you to just make a date to listen to the episode every Sunday night at 5 p.m. Central. Batch up whatever horrible task you hate doing. Put away your clean laundry for the week. Load the dishwasher for the night, right? Do whatever it is that is going to set you up. Do all your meal prep for that night. Do whatever it is that's going to set you up for a fresh start that week. And nobody likes folding laundry. Nobody likes meal prepping, but man, we're glad to have clean clothes on Thursday, right? And so that also gives you that entire week to get scheduled with your counselor. If you haven't seen them in a while, to get in with a counselor, or to get in touch with any of our guests from this week, or get connected with any of the resources from this week's episode. So this week we have a guest from Georgia. We have Vicki Smith with us today. Hi, Vicki.
Hey, y'all. I guess y'all is pretty spot on for Georgia. So hey, y'all.
You guys could have guessed she was from Georgia or from the South. Absolutely. So Vicki is a licensed psychotherapist. She's also a coach. And she, in her coaching and in her work, she really focuses for people who are struggling with people pleasing and with perfectionism. And oh my goodness, there is such a need for this. People who are struggling with very, very high functioning anxiety, people who are struggling with OCD and don't know it. It just comes out in these different ways. Or struggling with social anxiety and don't know it. It just comes out as people pleasing. We're very, very excited to hear about Vicki and her practice and the ways that she uses mindfulness and meditation and body-centered yoga and all of these different techniques to help people who are struggling with people-pleasing and perfectionism. And sometimes we don't even know that we are. We just know that we're having challenges and we just think we're being nice. So welcome, Vicki. Okay, so if somebody doesn't know, what is people-pleasing? And why is it a challenge in our lives? It sometimes sounds like it might be a benefit to be a people pleaser.
Right. Well, it can look like that on the outside. I talk to my clients about how they can shift from people pleasing to being a people person, because most of us that do people pleasing want to connect. And so we just use being overly available or being really nice, like the nicest person in the room, always understanding, overly responsible for things in a friendship or a relationship. So that's sort of a few bullet points about what it can look like. And I do think we do that to ease social anxiety, like you said. I do think we use it to try to preemptively erase any conflict with another person, because that feels like it could disrupt the connection, especially a positive connection. So, I think that we don't often know we're doing it. We just want to make everything easy with another person, or be that friend that doesn't cause any disruption, doesn't rock the boat, but really we can be kind of death by a thousand paper cuts, just kind of like taking it over and over again and really not showing up in the relationship. And then it's not fulfilling. And we're tired and drained. So it can come out sideways, or it can be pretty conscious, like, I need this person to like me. I'm going to do whatever I have to do.
It's a means to avoid conflict.
Right.
And when we have this idea in our minds that conflict is bad, conflict is not safe, conflict is disruptive and disturbs things and destroys things, when we have that association in our minds, then we will do whatever we can do to try to avoid conflict. If we don't have confidence in our own abilities to use conflict in productive ways, to use conflict to strengthen the relationship, to use conflict to promote, get us closer to the things that we want and need, then we will constantly try to avoid it and try to run away from it. And it does cause all of these other challenges in our lives. It burns us out. It exhausts us. It makes us feel resentful towards the other person when we're the ones doing these behaviors. And they're responding to those behaviors accordingly, right? If I say, hey, I have a cake and I have 10 pieces, and who wants one, and I give away all the cake, and then I'm mad that I don't have any cake, right? We build these things, we do these behaviors that cause us resentments against other people, but also against ourselves. And so you recommend, you do coaching for this, and then you also do therapy, individual therapy for this, or is it mainly coaching in your practice?
I do both. What I have found about moving to coaching, which happened over the pandemic, I had kind of had that on my radar as something that I wanted to have as a way to augment my private practice. But I really like the coaching aspect when it comes to people pleasing and perfectionism, because I think there's so much we can do with processing, like, how we became people pleasers. But I really would love for people to actually put more action to their insight. And it's not that you can't do that in therapy at all. I do that a lot. But I find when people show up and they're sort of ready, they're resentful enough that they're ready to make a change, coaching might line up more with what they need. And so we're like, all right, who do you need to talk to? What do you need to say? And we do all this kind of back end work, helping them find their voice, figure out, what is it that I really want? What is it that really fits for me? And then let me put some words to that. And now let me start to practice putting it out there. And I like to help people reframe that it's not necessarily, setting a boundary is not necessarily going to create conflict. It's just going to be a conversation. And so when they do find their words and they do start to put them out there to the other person, they don't have to be in fight or flight and ready for pushback. A lot of times people will be like, oh, okay, so you can't pick my kid up from school today? No problem. I'll figure it out. A lot of people are just going to go with it because they just need to get the thing done. If you're not going to help them do it, they'll just find somebody else. It's not going to be this big, black X over your friendship or anything like that. So, yeah, I like to land in coaching a lot more, and recently have been doing that more and finding people. Just like, I had a client yesterday, she was like, I'm just not that worried about what people think of me anymore. And I was just over there like confetti cannons blowing, I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. So yeah, that's how the coaching part came into it, is just really putting some action plans into place and holding people accountable to say what they need to say.
What are some of the barriers then that you think people pleasers especially have to even finding a coach? Because that might be an issue for them with that struggling if they don't see an issue in the people pleasing. So what are some of the barriers that you think that people have had with coming to find you for those services?
Well, in general, as well as just people pleasers looking for assistance to get out of the stuck places, I think that vulnerability and shame are two pretty big stumbling blocks for people to reach out and find somebody to help. I always think about it as it's the see me, oh, don't see me kind of thing. I really don't want to be doing this all by myself, but if I reach out and I raise my hand and ask for help, then I might be used to being criticized for showing up and speaking up. So I'm just going to stay hidden and hope that it goes away, hope that I can figure it out and that the other person acts right and I am not so upset or nervous around them. But I just feel like shame and vulnerability they're hard things to face and to let somebody else see you when you don't have everything figured out.
And I think the idea of so people pleasing at its core is and it's an attempt either consciously or unconsciously to try to control another person's behavior or to try to control an outcome that's actually outside of our control. I want that person to like me. I want that person to do things for me if I ask them for a favor.
Mhm.
I want this or I want that. And so at its core, it's sacrificing ourselves to try to change those things outside of that are actually outside of our control. And that really does contribute to shame. Because
Mhm.
when we feel or when we think that we should be able to control things that are outside of our control, how people
Yeah.
see us, how people think of us, how people interact with us, what they do, what they say to us, when we think that we should be able to control those things, and then we come up against the reality that we cannot, then it's very easy to feel that as okay, well, something is wrong with me, not
Right.
the guilt of I did something that's outside of that of who I am. And it really just comes down to something is wrong with me. I am not lovable because other people are not doing the things that I want them to do so that I can feel lovable.
Right.
And so shame, I mean, shame build up, uh, coming out as people pleasing really, really does go hand in hand because it comes from that belief of I should be able to change those things around me. I should be able to change other people based on what I do. And I find for myself, I mean, whenever those things happen, I love your example of I can't pick up your child from school, right? I need, because for myself, the internal struggle that happens for me in that situation is I erroneously think to myself, and I might be conscious of it and might not be conscious of the thought, but I think to myself, and I have a belief, I'm the only person who can pick up that child.
You guys
I'm
say
the
no, the child
only,
will be
it,
there.
the
So
child's just going to sit at the school alone and freeze to death in the snow, right? If I don't like, our ego makes us think that we are the only person that can do it or the only person that can do it right. And
Mm.
so we do these things and it comes out in people pleasing and it comes out in perfectionism. When the truth is that like I'm just not that important in the story of how this child gets home, right? But I think that I am. And I think it's a very human thing to think that we are.
Well, we want to be, right? I mean, I think that's the piece of see me, right? Because notice that am I'm a player in your life, right? That I rank high on your list of people that you think about, you consider, that you enjoy being around. We want to be special, right? We want to get favorable feedback from people, just as human nature, right? So if it's, I can do this thing for you, and we've learned, I call it being polite and right, like getting caught in those two things. If if I can do this thing for you, then I feel like I'm earning a special place where you will say, "Oh my gosh, she is so awesome. I love her." Not she is so polite or she does everything right, but like I just have this general, oh, I love being around her. She makes life so much easier. And therefore, I feel like, okay, I don't have to worry about somebody rejecting me or judging me or criticizing me. I have earned this place in our relationship where I feel safe, safe and connected, right? That's what we're all going for. So if I don't have to feel insecure, that, and I know that I can perform something for you or do something or be that listening ear whenever you need to vent, whatever it looks like, I will offer that for you. And then I feel like, okay, I'm having love come towards me. I'm having nurturing and care come towards me, and it soothes my nervous system. I'm good until the next thing I have to do.
Mhm. So how did you get started working with people pleasers? Like where or how did you decide like that was where you wanted to go towards with coaching?
I jokingly say it takes one to know one. So not that you have to be a heart surgeon or have a heart attack and have had a, heart surgery to be a heart surgeon, but for me, it was on the job training as a kid. And my dad was a workaholic. And so he did the whole perfectionism thing. And my mom was a great codependent for him. And that just was how it was. And, we're hearing so much about emotionally immature parents, or we're getting all that kind of new information about what what makes us have certain attachment styles, or what sets us in motion to do some of the personality, things that we do. But I didn't know that back then. It was just the atmosphere of my home. And so I just picked up that you need to make sure other people are happy with you. And my dad was pretty critical. He was critical of himself. So I can't really slight him for that spilling out onto the kids. But that's how it happened. It really became my journey, which I think a lot of us in this profession show up kind of going, how did I get to be myself? And who are the people that are right around me and my family? Why are they the way they are? So I just landed in working with anxious high achievers, as you were saying in the beginning, and really finding myself speaking their language, and we were just fitting together. And as I would do, just be maybe a few steps ahead of them on the path, and I would kind of throw some things out there like, hey, what do you think of this? And things started sticking for them, especially internal family systems. That really, really helped. And so I realized that people were leaving my office because they were getting better. And I was like, kind of angry sometimes because people were, doing the work. And I was like, I'm still figuring this out. How are you now, like guiding me? Which was actually a beautiful process. But so people started getting better. And I was like, I think I'm just going to hang out here, see if people can leave my office. And I love it too. It's just easy. It's easy for me to be with the folks that speak my language.
Yeah, it is amazing how differently I think we're able to understand these kinds of behaviors and these kinds of symptomology. Because as I know, like when I was growing up, if you needed a counselor, it was because you had some sort of behavioral issue that caused problems for other people.
Right.
And And a lot of times in school or, for parents, a lot of times kiddos that get referred for counseling are kiddos that are having symptomology that's impacting other
Yeah.
people. And so it really does set up that dynamic of, well, my value has to do with if I make things easier or harder for the people around me. Whereas now I do think that there has been kind of this shift in acknowledging that children who and adults who are high functioning, who are not causing problems for other people, right? Like your child who is always on time and sits at their desk like this and looks at you, right? And always is smiling and laughing, that child still has mental health needs and might still have symptomology that isn't disrupting the classroom and isn't harming other kids or annoying you as the teacher, but that is causing challenges for them in their lives. And I do think there's been this shift. Dr. John Delaney from Dave Ramsey group. Oh my gosh, I love him so much. And he talks about in his work about how your kiddos that are having behavioral issues that are causing challenges for other people, yes, absolutely, they need support. But the ones that are getting good grades that you never ever have to check on, good grades can be a trauma response. And that, those children and those adults, the adults that are constantly getting promoted and the adults that are constantly getting accolades and doing more and all of that, those sometimes that is symptomology. It's just socially acceptable symptomology because it doesn't cause problems for other people. It seems to benefit other people, but it causes challenges for us, for ourselves internally in our lives, and for people who are very aware of trying to make that external make ourselves either small, right, by not causing waves, or small by not creating conflict or challenges with people, or not expressing our needs. When we're trying to do that, and we're kind of in a habit of doing that, and we think that is what is safest for us to do, then we are far more likely to internalize all of those challenges, and we get them. We're the ones who have to suffer from them, not the person who maybe is creating part of the challenge, right? So I like that there is this shift, and I love that there are people like you out there who are acknowledging that, okay, it's not just the people who are breaking the law and causing problems. It's not just the people who can't get out of bed and go to work. It's also the people who are going to work, who are working 15 hours a day, 16 hours a day. Check in on those people because we are still having symptomology, and all of it is symptomatic. It's just the different way that it comes out.
Yeah, and the anxious high achiever is just that person, and the people pleaser are just near and dear to my heart, because you can climb the corporate ladder or become the partner in the firm or whatever, whatever your world looks like, that you're trying to, well, you're hoping that that will ease some of this insecurity inside. You get there, and then you're like, how did I get here? And can I do this? And while I feel like, and I see that people pleasing and perfectionism very, fraternal twin is imposter syndrome, right? Of, this isn't it really me. If somebody, when is somebody going to knock on my door and say, how did you land in the corner office? It's just, I have to keep it going, and it's going to come out sideways, as we know, right? So there's going to be addiction, or there's going to be some kind of escapism, and it just, I feel deeply and dearly for the folks that look around and find themselves in places where they're just like, despite all of the ways that I think and feel about myself, look at where I am. And now, how do I handle just the normal pressure of being in this position, much less having the internal churning as I'm trying to be the partner or be the, CTO or whatever it is. So I think a lot of these folks are running um, big businesses, making important decisions, and wouldn't it feel great if they had some solidity inside, some a reference point inside where they could make decisions that weren't as reactive, or they even sort of started leading their teams and groups from a place of like, let's slow down for a moment and let's see how we can make this work without expecting the whole corporate culture to change. But if I can affect these 10 people in my team a little bit differently, and we can ease a little bit of our anxiety, and help each other, or you know just change the culture of those few people around us, gosh, wouldn't that just be, maybe we wouldn't sell so much alcohol or have so many people in you know addiction recovery circles, even though those are, whew, I'm glad those exist.
Mhm. So how does somebody know when their people pleasing is becoming an issue and that they do need to seek out coaching?
Well, I feel like the folks that show up at my office are saying, I am so angry at people. And that inner resentment that
Mhm.
you mentioned has hit a place where I can't ignore it anymore. There's a book that I love. I always get it mixed up. Eastern Body, Western Mind. And
Yes.
okay,
Love it. Yes.
yes. So she talks about, and I think it might be in the second chakra area that she talks about this, but it's um, internal defiance, external compliance, which is, ever since I read those 4 words, I was like, that is it. That is people pleasing in a nutshell. And so I tend to get the folks that are, the internal defiance is just too much for them at that point. They just start avoiding phone calls or texts, or they might have had an outburst with somebody and that shocked them. Um, so their resentment built up is what I find. And they'll finally say, I actually don't like people, and I thought that I did like people, and help. Like, I think I'm going to burn down my relationships, or I'm avoiding the people that I was close to, and that feels odd to me. So we do work with my best friend anger and start to hear what that buildup is like inside.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you talked about the vulnerability of seeking counseling services, and also that vulnerability that we're trying to use people pleasing and perfectionism uh to make less vulnerable, and
Hmm.
to if you can see my good deeds, and you can see, and that can be a placeholder for seeing me, that can feel so much safer. If you can see the things that I do for you instead of seeing me, and that way you can feel really great about the things that I do for you instead of how you might actually feel if you saw me. It is one of my favorite things to watch is extreme makeup videos, because you'll see you'll see a person made up one way, and then you see them made up a totally different way, and the way that they do that, like their whole face is they look completely different. They look 40 years younger, 40 years older. It's amazing. They look like they have a shorter head, a taller head, and those are I love watching that, because in a way they're if we are putting that emphasis on, well, what do I wear and what do I look like? That's another kind of look at this and don't look at me. Look at how my face looks.
Mhm.
Look at how my hair looks. Look at how my sneakers are new and expensive, right? And not and don't look at me. And people pleasing behaviors and perfectionism behaviors are like, look at my test score. Don't look at me. Look at my test score. Look at my job title. Don't look at me. Look at my paycheck. Don't look at me. Look at the house I live in, right? Like those kinds of things. Look at my achievements. Don't look at me. It's a way that we kind of put these blocks up between people and ourselves, if we're not feeling secure in being able to be vulnerable. And a lot of us grew up in situations where it was not safe to be vulnerable. It just wasn't. And so we had to put these things up and say,
Mhm.
okay, criticize my clothes. I don't care. Right. That's not me. Right. So I'm going to put that out there for you to criticize. And the same thing is true with weight, right? So a lot of people struggle with body weight and body image, but a lot of times what's happening is, okay, I'm going to put this body out there in front of the
Mhm.
world, criticize that, right? Like I'm okay if you criticize me for being overweight because that's not actually me, right? Like that's just my body. You can criticize that, right? Or you can say what you want or think what you want about that. um but and the same is true with anorexia, right? And the same is true with
Mhm.
bulimia. It's I'm going to put this form out there in replacement of myself. It's like a what are they called, an avatar, right? Let me put
Yes.
this avatar out there instead of myself because it feels safer in those situations where we weren't safe. And so the challenges are that once we are safe, when we grow up, or maybe when we're in a different relationship, or we're in a different circumstance in life where maybe we have more control over our world and things like that, or
Mhm.
we have more support system around us, we're still used to looking to those things for safety, but we are safe
Mhm.
and we don't realize it. And then that's when they start to trip us up. A Kevlar bulletproof vest is great for me and great protection when I'm in active combat. But when I'm trying to run a marathon, that's horrible. That's going to slow me down terribly. And the same is true with these kinds of safety and protective measures that we've put in place around us. We can
Mhm.
take them off, but it's like taking off training wheels. It's scary and you fall down a lot when you do it. And then you go, oh, like my daughter, no, I need my training wheels back on. we grab them back on and we hold on to them, right? So it is a process of put them back on and then go, these are slowing me down. I can't go as fast with my training wheels on. Let me take them
Mhm.
off, and kind of going through that process.
Yeah, and I love internal family systems for that, is having understanding that there are parts of our personality. So there's a people pleaser part that is sort of like our personal PR agent. Like it goes out and it says, hey, this is who Vicki is, right? She's understanding, she's available, she's, aware, she's whatever I think is, important qualities. And so interact with that part, right? I don't necessarily think about it as an avatar. It might be because of my age, but I think about when I was a kid going to the movie theater, like especially like Indiana Jones or something, and there was that cardboard cutout of Harrison Ford in the Indiana Jones outfit. That's what I feel like we're all walking around with, is this big cardboard cutout of ourselves, and we're sort of peeking around it going, did that go well? Okay, let me keep that up. So I feel like that's what internal family systems really offered me. And when I share it with my clients, they do this like, oh my God, I've never seen it that way before. That's what's happening. And it helps us to recognize that it is a strategy, right? It's a way that we've used to get through. And so there are many strategies that we use. Some of them protect us from the outside world, and some of them just manage the outside world. Like if I can look organized, or if I can have the degree on my wall, I'll just I'll just do that. I'll manage your expectation or your viewpoint of me. And getting back, behind closed doors and helping those parts of us relax a little bit so that we can start to experiment with the vulnerability of also who we are, right? We are a person that is understanding and available and can be helpful and conscientious, but we don't have to have the best on all the time, right? We don't have to have that, use that part of our personality to connect, because then you'll only connect with that part of my personality and you won't see that sometimes I'm irritable, right? Sometimes I don't have a smile on my face. And then if I can't let you see some of that too, then eventually it's going to build up inside, and that accumulated effect of resentment or just like, gosh, no one really knows me, or even I don't know me, that lost feeling. You all might hear that when people show up in your offices too. Like, I just don't know where I am anymore with what I want, or how I've created the life that I have. Like, how did that happen without my knowing it? So I think it's helpful to know that we can put the vest on when we are going into active duty, and we can actually use that smile on our face to disarm people, but not all the time, because it wears us out.
Funny because, oh, Julie, we can talk. The work voice. Julie said work voice to me. And I remember the first time Julie and I hung out outside of work, and I was like, oh, that's your real voice. Like,
That's what you sound like.
I hadn't heard Julie's real voice. So that's what that reminds me of as well. It's like your customer service voice that like we keep up all day long, when you don't get to hear like that real work voice outside, or personal voice outside of work. It's funny.
I love that. I'm going to use that. I'll credit y'all, but I'm going to use that. I think about it as helping people develop their outside voice, is what I call it. It's like, because we might actually know what our internal voice is because it's always chattering to us, but it's like, if you want to start saying what you mean, like, you need to develop your outside voice instead of your inside voice. But I like the work voice too.
It's funny what you said about smiling too, because smiling is such a part of that. It's so ingrained in our culture, and especially as women, it's so ingrained into as an expectation of something that we should be doing all the time. And it made me think of last October, I completed a marathon and I hated every second of it, but I was like, and when people hear that I'm like a perfectionist, high achiever, whatever, they're like, oh, did you do a marathon? Because it's like in the perfectionist starter kit, right? Is you have to do a marathon. And so I did it and I hated every second of it. And when I crossed the finish line, they announced my name and my number, and they said, oh, you don't look very happy, right? Because I finished like this. I wasn't happy. I didn't look happy, and my finish line pictures are terrible because they're just me going, as I crossed the line, and my whole body's drooping. I just hated every second of it. And so the announcer goes, you could look a little happier that you're finishing this, accomplishment. And I drooped lower because I was like, no. And then he said it again, and I was like, I'm not smiling. But there's this expectation, right? That like, and especially with achievement, there's this expectation that like you're supposed to go through all this horrible, hard crap to get to this outcome that you want. And then you're supposed to be super happy about it. And, and if you're not expressing your happiness about it, something's wrong with you. And people are going to be like, why are you not happy about it? Because it's hard, And so, like for Chrissa and I too, as we're in the roles that we have in this organization, a lot of times people are like, well, what would you have to be stressed out about? And we're like, everything. And so, but because that kind of becomes part of leadership, my doctorate is in leadership. So part of leadership, there's that expectation of like always being on and always being happy. And then when we go to lunches with people and people like just hear us talk and complain about our lives, they're like, oh, you're a normal person. Okay, like you're a human. That's fine. Great.
Mm-hmm.
Now we know that. Now we can all move on with our lives. But it's that like work voice expectation. That's that customer service voice expectation. And honest, not to blame schools, but that's where it starts. It is in school. You are expected to do these things. You are expected to comply. And if you don't line up straight, if you don't keep your voice down when another person is talking, my daughter just got in trouble because she told another student that they were wrong in a math problem. They were working together and she said, "You're wrong." And she said it loud and the whole class heard. And while I can empathize with the other student and embarrassment that might cause, I can also empathize with my child and be like, she was wrong.
She's right.
Like, it's okay for you to say that is wrong, right? Not "you're stupid." You can't say that, right? But you can say that's wrong to another person. Like, it's okay to do that. And I didn't want her to come out of that experience thinking, we had to isolate. Okay, the challenge here was the volume of your voice when you said that, right? Because you said it in front of the whole class and they heard you and you didn't mean to do that, but that's what happened, right? Versus, I did not want her to come out of that going, I can't say that something is wrong when it's wrong, right? I didn't want her to think that was why she was in trouble or, had a challenge. But, these are the kinds of things that as parents and teachers and counselors and people who are, support people in children's lives and in other people's lives, that we can kind of have these conversations and isolate these things out and go, no, it's okay to not smile for pictures. It's okay to not smile for, like, if you're not happy, don't smile. It's okay to do that.
Right.
But it is a challenge. It goes counter to everything that we've been taught.
The reparenting, if you will, of ourselves as we become adults, and we kind of live in this adult world for a while, and we can see through our kids or through a friend or whatever that, like, actually it's okay to cross a finish line and not be like happy about it. It's okay to be tired at the end of hard work and to acknowledge that it was hard. There's also time for celebration, of course, because as perfectionists, just go, okay, what's the next thing? So it does, require a little bit of like, before you hook up for another thing, let's like kind of marinate in the fact that you did get through that. And we can acknowledge it was hard. You don't have to pretend it wasn't. And you don't have to pretend that you're ready for the next thing. Reparenting, though, I think is us letting ourselves know that I can say that was hard. I can say I'll never do another marathon again, which, by the way, I'm in your camp, like 7 hours cap for a marathon, and I come across the finish line at like 6 hours and 36 minutes. Nobody was happy, right? No one is happy. So I think the ability for us to say to ourselves, it's okay for me to say, whoa, wait a second, that didn't go well. Let's regroup. It might be the way of saying that's wrong, and we might have more sophisticated ways of saying it. But if you're a third grader or whatever, and you just say, no, that's wrong, because I know that we're supposed to get the right answer. Yes, we want people to have the ability to speak up. And then it is, how am I talking? How am I talking to myself, even when I start to do that inner work of, oh, I have something to say about this. So how do I want to present it to people? And then how do I want to, respond to myself when I recognize, like, I'm tired. I shouldn't be tired. No, I can be tired, and I don't have to criticize myself for it. I can actually listen and take that information and do something with it. So I think there's a lot that we sort of reconfigure inside as therapists and as clients when we go and see our own people around, yeah, like that was hard and I don't ever want to do that again. And I can look at those pictures of me, not happy as I crossed the finish line, and I can remember that was an accomplishment, but also it wasn't something I want to try to accomplish again. That's okay.
So if you could give someone then on the fence about starting counseling or starting coaching for people pleasing, what would be a suggestion that you would give to them?
Thinking about when you're on the fence with something, I like to go to this idea in business, there's the know, like, and trust factor, right? So you get to know someone. I think it's with any relationship, but I've heard it through the business lens. You get to know someone, you start to like them, and then you develop trust.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if you're on the fence and you might be worried about, having somebody correct you or tell you you're wrong for how you feel, again, that vulnerability and shame, then there's so many ways these days that we can get to know people without actually being in their office or on the screen with them. And that's through, as funny as it sounds, social media, websites, podcasts. People take time to vet you, right? And to get to know you. And I think if you're on the fence, if you're skeptical or you're just scared, then do your homework. Get Google on your side and look at a few people. Look in the search of Apple Podcasts or wherever and go like, I am looking for somebody that helps me with addiction, and you'll get some people that you can listen to for a while and see like, how does this, what's this person's energy like? Am I resonating with them? Like I said earlier, do I speak the same language that they do? Do they feel approachable to me? Do they feel real to me, or are they talking down to me? And there's so much a craving for authenticity, right? Of our providers these days. People you hear like, is that a real person, or are they just, you know, reading from a book, and staying intellectual with how they're sharing their information? If they feel real to you, that might be helpful to kind of move into that like and then trust factor with people. So I tell people like, use social media to your benefit.
Yeah,
There's probably going to be something out there that that person has created that says like, hey, this is how I do things. What do you think?
I like that.
Yeah, this is great advice. So, you have a podcast. It's yourself and some coworkers or some partners of yours, and it's called Power to the Pleasers, right?
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's solo right now, and I'm going to bring some guests on coming up to talk about how pleasing and perfectionism shows up in marriage, committed partner relationships, business, mostly the entrepreneur route of business, and with parenting. Those are the three people I have that I've said, hey, will you do this with me? Will you come and talk about this with me? Otherwise, it's just me so far.
Awesome.
Awesome. Very exciting. So, yeah, you can find that podcast, Power to the Pleasers. And you can also find Vicki at www.powertothepleasers.com to look for those coaching packages and that individual work that you might want to do. If you heard something in here where you were like, oh no, that's me. I didn't know that was a thing, but it is. Right. And I think that's some of the biggest value of talking about these things, because people don't know. They think
Right.
that it's, and it's so easy to think that like this is just a me problem. This is just a me
Mm-hmm.
thing that I'm doing to myself and everybody just hates me. And like just all of these things that kind of just go through our minds naturally. And when we can hear that, no, like we're not the only person going through that. We're not the only person having these feelings or having these symptoms affect us, and that there are people have ways to stop that from affecting us so much and stop those symptoms from taking over what we do and why we do it.
Right.
So very, very exciting. And so we will link all of that information as well so that everybody can find Power to the Pleasers and get connected with Vicki. So Vicki, thank you so much for being here today. We appreciate it. And it's such a needed topic and such a, I think, an underserved demographic of people who struggle with these types of anxiety that have this type of symptomology. So very, very useful information. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, y'all. Yeah, I just want people to know that it's not everybody has their stuff together. We want to look like it, but we don't. So if you want to help kind of rebuild your infrastructure, find a counselor, right?
Mm-hmm.
I
am Vicki Smith and I need a counselor.
Yes. Awesome. Me too. So does Chrissa. We all we all do. You need a counselor and we need a counselor as well. So thank you, Vicki, for being here. We will link all of the information to get in touch with Vicki this week in the show notes there. If you are in Iowa and you're looking for outpatient mental health counseling services in any of our 6 office locations or over the phone or over the computer, give us a call at 800-531-4236. Or if your kiddo is getting real good grades, but spends a lot of time worrying about school or spends a lot of time stressed out about school and having symptomology like that doesn't get them in trouble, but causes challenges for them, go ahead and give us a call to get set up for BHIS, for behavioral health intervention. That is a behavior. Crying over a test score that's a 96 is a behavior that behavioral health intervention can help a child cope with.
Mm-hmm. And like Julie mentioned at the beginning of the episode, we post new episodes at 5 p.m. Central every Sunday. So save up whatever horrible task you hate doing that week and listen to us while you get that done. And we can help you connect with a new counselor or a resource that was on our podcast that week as well. And if you have any questions for us, you can reach us on our Facebook page at You Need a Counselor Podcast, or on our Instagram at You Need a Counselor Podcast, or our YouTube account, or we also have a Patreon now at patreon.com/Heart and Solutions. And okay, I think I covered everything. Lots of places you can find us. So I'm Chrissa Hunt.
And I'm Julie Johnson, and we need a counselor.
And so do you.
Bye.